Good afternoon. Welcome into the Bobcast, the episode for the 22nd, the week of the 22nd of January. I'm Dan Wallace with you, and we start things off this afternoon with men's basketball head coach Webb Hatch. Coach, so far a good season for your boys. You sit 5-5 right now in the Capital Athletic Conference, a lot higher than most people expected your team to be. Let me start with this question. 5-5, you're picked dead last in the conference. You're sitting right now in fifth place. It could even be higher than that with a couple of the results that didn't go your way. Are you surprised by what your team has done so far? I know that you guys are the revelation around the Capital Athletic Conference, but have what your boys been able to do surprised you so far?
No.
I had a feeling that was going to be your answer.
No. I knew we had a lot of seniors back. I felt sure that Lawrence Pettis was going to handle the role as our starting point guard as a sophomore. I knew that Edwin Cole had improved quite a bit over the spring and the summer. So, I wasn't predicting in my mind that we were going to finish necessarily first, because I thought York was going to be awfully good, as they are. But I'm not surprised that we've been as competitive as we are. I'm disappointed that we aren't 7-3 or 8-2, because we've obviously had some games that we could have won. But we've been in 4 overtime games and won all 4 of them. So somebody could say, well, you could have lost all 4 of them too. So we've been very, very competitive. It seems like every game that we've lost, we've had a 6 to 8 minute time in there where we struggle to score a little bit. But this team is capable of making runs and scoring, 10, 12, 14 points in a 4 or 5 minute stretch, which we haven't had teams here in about 5 or 6 years that could do that. So I think that's a big difference. Our pressure defense can create some turnover issues. We run the floor pretty well in transition. And obviously when you score, you can just look at kids' bodies language, and they tend to play better defense after they score. Even though when you don't score, that's when you really need a good stop. So I'd like to be better than we are, but I'm not surprised that we're where we are.
Well, and of course, a couple of those games that you're mentioning that you could be around 8-2, 8-2, or 7-3. The loss at home to St. Mary's, a close loss, and a loss this week to Christopher Newport, another close loss. Let's start with the game this week against Southern Virginia, an overtime come-from-behind win, 82-76. And I'll tell you what, I came to talk to you going into halftime, and you were about as angry as I have ever seen you, to the point where you almost completely snubbed me and just walked away. But, well, I won't hold a grudge on you for that one. But so you tell me at halftime that you're not happy with the way your team played, being down 12 points. Let's just start right here. And what did you say? What were the words that came out of your mouth to your team in the locker room that turned it around? Because it looked like a completely different team in the second half against Southern Virginia, and it wasn't a comeback that was, you came out, you went on a 12-0 run to start the half or anything like that. It was a methodical, take your time, chip away kind of comeback. What did you say to them at halftime?
And I apologize for being a little short.
No hard feelings. No hard feelings.
I did get on them pretty good at halftime. One of the things we talked about, if we're going to shoot threes, we want to shoot what's called inside-out threes. So get the ball inside first, and then kick it out for a 3, as opposed to just coming down and shooting a 3 right away. My thought process is, if we can get the ball inside, and even if we don't get a shot and then we kick it out, we're anticipating a 3 being taken then. So we're anticipating possibly getting a rebound if we don't make it. So I was pretty emphatic about that we had taken bad 3s during the first half. The other thing was, we weren't rebounding particularly well. And, they've got a 6'10" kid, McCready, but he was out. So we didn't have to deal with him. We didn't do a good job on Thornton, the 6'7" kid inside, who had 21 points at halftime, which I can't remember the last time somebody had 21 points on us in the first half. So we knew we had to do a better job defensively on him. And, that old thing about 50-50 balls, loose balls, we weren't getting any. And you've got to chase those down. So those are the things we talked about. We had to defend better, we had to rebound better, we had to play harder, and we had to be smarter on the shots that we were taking. And as you said, we didn't come out and have like a 12-0 run or something to start the half. We just kind of kept grinding away and grinding away and grinding away. And then with about 4 or 5 minutes ago, it's like an 8-point ball game. So that's anybody's ball game then. And we went on a nice run to close out the game. I think they went about 5 or 6 minutes at the end of the game without scoring.
Well, Cale Thornton that day finishing with 30 points is what he ended up with. I want to touch on that in a second because you have another very potent big man coming into town this week against York with Blake Wright. Blake Wright may very well be the conference player of the year by the end of the year this year, but we'll touch on that in a minute. So then the other game this week was Christopher Newport, a game that you guys held at one point a 16-point lead early in the first half, a game that your young men came out flying. And one thing that I've noticed about this team compared to last year and something that I think a lot of teams struggle with your team is the speed that with which your team plays, the transition offense that you use. You're not a big team. You haven't been a big team. You have one real inside presence, and that's Edwin Cole. But it seems like Christopher Newport did the same thing. They struggled with your transition offense and getting up and down the floor. And there was a point where you even went extremely small. You had Lawrence Pettis, Obadiah Stith, Jordan Johnson, Daniel Alexander on the floor, 4 guards. And I think the fifth man may have even been Sean Patterson at that point. You went extremely small. Did you see something against Christopher Newport, and have you seen something against other teams this season where you just think that if we go small, we can run the floor and they just won't be able to keep up?
Right. We're hard to guard in the open floor because we're pretty quick. The problem is, can you rebound with that small lineup? And, you can get after people and fly around a little bit defensively, but if they decide to just try to jam the ball inside, can we prevent them from scoring? Or if they throw it up and they say, our offense is going to be, we're going to throw it up on the rim and go get it. Because we don't think you can rebound with us. That's a problem. And Daniel Alexander's a pretty good rebounder. So he plays a lot bigger than his size. So, yeah, we have gone with smaller lineups. And the one thing we were aware of, we thought that CNU had difficulty guarding Lawrence Pettis. And, he had a pretty good game down at their place, and he had a good game this Saturday. So he's as quick as anybody, or quicker than anybody on their team. So that's a matchup issue for them a little bit. We had a couple of bad plays in the first half that it would have been nice to go in at halftime up 10 or 12 as opposed to up 3. I won't get into officiating. There was one call on us right at the end where we didn't think we fouled the kid, but the official did, so I guess he did. But we played awful well, but we knew they were going to make a run at us at some point in time, and they did. But I believe the score was 80-80 with a little over
about a minute and a half.
And a half left. We got a timeout. We ran the play we wanted to run. We got the shot we wanted to get. We just didn't make it, and we got the rebound, but turned it over on the rebound. So, we had a chance to maybe go up 82-80, but unfortunately we weren't able to pull it off.
Lawrence Pettis finishing with 20 points in that one against Christopher Newport. And the one thing that I noticed that CNU didn't do is they're about the only team this season that didn't push the ball inside. Their big man, Svante Chappell, only 5 points on the afternoon. They did have Spencer Marin did have about 13, but he played sparingly for the most part. Were you kind of surprised that they were maybe the one team this season that didn't really try to force the ball down onto the low block?
I was surprised that they didn't go to Chappell more because he's a load. He's a really big guy. And, how many block shots did Edwin Cole have? He had 5 block shots. I think he had 8 down at their place. So maybe they were concerned about that. But, Ed's long, but he's not particularly big as far as bulk is concerned. So big guys can post him up and bully him a little bit. And you mentioned York. They got Wright, and they also got the Myers kid. And they're both 6'6", 6'7". They can shoot threes. They can score inside. it's going to be a matchup issue for us.
You did lose the second game 85-80 to Christopher Newport, but you mentioned that you did win down in Newport News earlier in the season. Christopher Newport, for the most part, it has been for years the top team in this conference. Can you take away, even though you lost 85-80, something from this game and say, this is how much we've improved, that we can now play with the top teams in this conference and keep it extremely competitive? Newport not as good as they have been in the past, of course. Right now, York is the standard bearer for this conference, but can you take something away from this and say that now we are very competitive with the top tier in this conference?
Sure. I mean, our guys believe they can play with anybody. You know, our number one goal right now is we want to make the conference tournament. So we got to finish in the top 6. And the second goal would be to finish at least 3rd or 4th, which would allow us to host a first-round game. So we got 8 games left. We got tons of stuff to play for. You know, again, making the playoffs and hopefully maybe hosting a game. Yeah, you know, seeing you graduate a couple of really good players last year, and then they've got one player, Marcus Carter, who's been hurt almost the entire year, and he's very, 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 very good. And I don't know if he's going to get a medical red shirt and come back and play next year or not. But they're a little different team when they've got him. But their record, what is their? They're
13-4
still
now.
13-4. You know, most of us would be quite delighted to be 13-4. But it is encouraging that we can play with these guys, and you know, having some seniors in the program certainly helps. But you know, we got a couple of sophomores that are playing awful well, and a junior.
Let's talk about the games coming up this week now, and the first one comes on Wednesday when the York Spartans come to town. The first time you played York in York was 92-75 win for the Spartans, and again the same issues kind of plagued your team that game. Dalton Myers 28 points down on the low block, Blade Reich 24. This week, knowing that those two are the two biggest threats, they're two of the top 3 scorers in the conference this season, how do you prepare for a team like York, who, when your only true big man is Edwin Cole and they have 2 down on the low block at any given time, how do you prepare for that, and how do you get Edwin to know that he's gonna be probably playing close to 40 minutes as long as he stays out of foul trouble, and know that he is going to be the only guy down low really that can be a rim protector, and how do you just get him prepared for that?
Well, I mean, we've got to have somebody to help him. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it be Dalton Goss, whether it be Darren Campbell, whether it be Sean Patterson, whether it be Jeff McMorris, whether it be Dexter Pelap, whether it be Darren Campbell. I mean, those are all kids who are 6'4" to 6'5", who can play inside defensively for us. We played this past Saturday without Chris Costin, who his mother passed away and had to go to a funeral in South Carolina. So we'll have him back. And Chris is a very good defender, and he's had as many as 10 rebounds in a game this year, even though he's only about 6'2.5". So he will get some more playing time. You know, I foresee that we're going to play some zone to try not to have to match up with those guys one-on-one and man-to-man, but they shoot the ball awful well, so, you know, you kind of pick your poison. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a matchup issue for us. I mean, if Ed should get in foul trouble, then that could really be a tough night for us.
The other game coming up this week is against St. Mary's. You travel down to St. Mary's County, a game that I think you will even say that you guys should have had the first time when you were up here. Was a 79-76 win or loss to the St. Mary's Seahawks. This is going to be your last trip down to St. Mary's as well. One thing that I want to ask you and kind of have wanted to ask you is, since these are your last trips going around the conference, is it a bit nostalgic for you, and is there a bit of a moment of kind of clarity whenever you go to each place for the final time, and you'd kind of just take a second and say, this is the last time I'm going to be here, and kind of just take it all in? Yeah.
And when we were in the other league, the AMCC, I mean, I wasn't retiring then, but when we knew it was the last year that we were going to be in that conference, when we went to, you know, Pitt Bradford and Hilbert and Medaille and Dewville and all those schools up in the Cleveland and Buffalo area, you kind of went, oh, this is the last time I come here in the dead of winter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I mean, and, we had never won at Christopher Newport, so that was nice to get a win there. So, I mean, you do reflect on that some, but you're just kind of caught up in the moment, coaching your team and, getting ready for the next game and trying to have your kids focused and play hard and play smart and play together. So I'll probably think about it more when the season's over, and I'll go, wow, that's it. But right now you're just kind of caught up in the moment. There's a few trips I won't miss.
You won't miss.
I tell friends, people don't realize we don't have any games that are less than 3 hours. There's no games where you can jump on the bus in 30 minutes. You're at your arch rivals and playing. Every game we play is a 3-hour trip if all goes well. So that's a lot of long bus rides, and I've been doing that for 44 years, so 19 here. So some of that you won't necessarily miss, to be honest.
Well, last question for you today, and then we'll let you get out of here. Last time you took on St. Mary's, it was again the same issue. A guy in Spencer Schultz who's not a big-time scorer, had 20 points inside for St. Mary's. Traveling down there, what do you need to do differently? What does your team need to do differently against the Seahawks this time that would allow you to come away with the victory and flip the script against them?
Well, Spencer's a pretty good player. He's out of Clear Spring, which is about an hour and 15 minutes from here, and was at West Point last year and contacted us about transferring, and we would have loved for him to come here. So we were aware that he could score. Because in his senior year in high school, he averaged over 20 points a game. We've just got to be more consistent. I think that last game we led for like 37 minutes.
Something like that, yeah.
The only time they may have been ahead was the last minute and a half of the ball game. But that's all that counts, is if you're ahead when the game ends. So we've got to be more consistent. We've got to do a better job defensively. We've got to be make the shots we're supposed to make. Obviously be aware of him and not let him get going. I know they're playing better. They played well enough to beat us, but, they've been in a lot of ball games over the last 3 weeks. So if we don't have our heads screwed on right and aren't ready to play, we'll be in trouble.
All right, Coach. Well, best of luck to you, and we'll talk to you again coming up this time next week.
Thanks.
I'm joined now by women's head basketball coach Carrie Saunders, and Coach, a little bit of a tough week, so we'll hit on that this past week just briefly, and we start with the game against Southern Virginia. You look back at that game now as a 79-59 loss to the Knights here at Bobcat Arena, and first off, the one thing I noticed is they have the two leading scorers in the country, or not in the country, make it in the conference, in Katie Garish and Shelby Butler. First things first, going into that game, you had to know it was going to be a tough test, especially when their two leading scorers are both big inside presences down on the low block, and your team at times this year has had a little bit of trouble rebounding the ball, especially. Sydney has gotten much better in the rebounding department as the year has gone along, but what was your expectation going into that game, knowing that you had to contend with the two leading scorers and potentially the player of the year in the conference and potentially the rookie of the year in the conference, and how difficult was that to prepare for those two?
Yeah, going into that game on Wednesday, I told my team after the Wesley win last Saturday that this Southern Virginia team is not nearly what they used to be. And I immediately told them that after the win on Saturday, and that we got to get ready and we've got to prepare. Watching film and watching their stats all year long, I knew that the two girls in the post were going to cause us some issues. But the other big thing is that their tempo and their pace and their style of play gets you out of your rhythm. And we talked about that a lot. Is that we have to take care of the ball and do those little things that necessarily aren't big plays, but all of them add up to a big play. And the other thing is protecting the paint. And we talked about ways to defend, and when we defended it correctly and everyone was on board and everyone was doing what they were supposed to be doing, we were getting stops. But you have to consistently do that against players like that, and especially two players like that. There is no possession off when there's two of them. So they're both very skilled, and that Southern Virginia team is ready to play.
They did have 36 points in the paint that night against your girls, and we take it to Saturday. Saturday was a bit of a different story, where you knew the number 10 team in the country was coming into town. You knew it was going to be a difficult game, and then you got thrown on top of you that your top player, Victoria Diggs, was out for the day, and you weren't going to have her. And first off, that throws a massive wrench into anything you do, because the trap that they play is just completely unforgiving. It is about as dominant a defense as there is in this country, and Victoria Diggs is probably one of your best players that would have been being able to break that trap. She's an explosive player on her own individually, let alone when you put her with the rest of your girls. How difficult was it for your team without a player of her caliber to handle what they were throwing at you defensively?
Yeah, the biggest thing about, losing Victoria is we figured out on Friday that we weren't going to have her. So that morning it was kind of like, okay, we have one practice now to prepare. And the biggest thing I talked to my girls about was that we were fine. Other people had to step up, and that's exactly what we got. So from that standpoint, yes, everyone wants to go in and upset the number 10 team in the nation. I do, definitely. But at the same time, it's about facing that adversity and other people stepping up and showing that, like, okay, I got your back. Yes, she has led our team in most, especially offensive categories, and then those unspoken categories, like breaking pressure and handling that and putting that on her shoulders. But I thought Kayla Wilson did. I've been waiting for this. So I kind of, in a weird way, I was okay with Diggs sitting out because I wanted to see what I knew that she was capable of. We had a conversation on Thursday about that, me and her, saying that now's the time, and this was before I knew Diggs was out. And she stepped up big for us. So I'm hoping that that'll continue.
15 points for Kayla Wilson on the afternoon in 25 minutes of action. And I think that when you talked to me after the game, you weren't upset. It was the number 10 team in the country, and you knew it was going to be tough. You kind of praised your girls. You praised what Christopher Newport did. You already mentioned Kayla Wilson a little bit, but what were your takeaways from that game that you could take away from that game against Christopher Newport and say, you know what, we're in an okay place right now?
I think the biggest thing was taking from what we did the first time when we were at CNU to now. We talked about breaking the press, and when we did it, we did it, and we got layups, and that's exactly what I said that we were going to do. And so from that standpoint, I was extremely happy because we progressed, and that's what you're looking for, especially when you're facing a team like that is progression, that the next time you see them, you don't want to go backwards or stay the same. And that's something that we did a little bit. And other players stepped up. I think Victoria Yoder also is playing really, really great minutes for us right now, and is stepping into her own. So there's a lot of different things happening that I am pleased about. Obviously, there's things to fix and things to work on, and we will work on those things. But against a team like that, I was happy with the way that we kind of handled ourselves for the most part. And certain girls really stepped up and remained calm and did the things that we just needed to do. So, yeah, I mean, I was pleased that there was at least progress. And that progress will hopefully carry over into the next game. And, I mean, I told my girls there's still a long season ahead. Well, this is game one of the second new year of our season. So there's a lot of basketball be left to play.
And let's talk about that right now for a second. That was the first game of the second half of what is a double round robin in this conference. Right now, after 10 games, 8 left, you sit at 4-6, and your team sits after that game against Southern Virginia just below the red line as Southern Virginia holds the tiebreaker. you still have a lot of games left, and coming up this week is going to be York and is going to be St. Mary's. Mm-hmm. Of course, you would like to be a little bit higher in the standings than you are right now, but are you okay with where you're at right now, and do you feel like your team is still primed to make a run towards the top of that conference and have a decent place heading into the CAC tournament?
100%. I'm fine with where we are. Obviously, there's some games that we dropped, like that Southern Virginia game, and some other games where we would have loved to be higher, but you got to put your head down, and you can't focus on the standings right now. There's a lot of games left to be played, a lot of matchups, and those 4, 5, 6 spots are going to flip probably 2 or 3 more times. So the biggest thing is to not focus on that and to put your head down, do what you have to do, and if we do what we should be able to do with these last remaining 8 games, then we'll be fine and we'll be in that playoff spot. But it's about us. It's not about what other teams are doing to other teams. Like, we have to do what we know we can do, and we'll be fine.
The 2 games coming up this week, I already mentioned, home against York College, on the road against St. Mary's. And so the first one on Wednesday is York College, a game that on the road your team dropped. It was a very, very close, a very competitive game, though, 61-56. The big issues came with players who are very good players in this conference. Katie McGowan, 18 points, and Katie Wagner, 17 points. A lot of that coming for Katie Wagner down on the block, and this York College team. So you head into this game, you know it was a close game, a competitive game the first time around. What does your team need to do differently to flip that 5 points in your favor?
Yeah, we talked about the York game, and even after the York game, we didn't play a full game of basketball. We talked about that at halftime, that we kind of were like, do you think that we're playing well right now? And everyone was kind of, no, I think we can do better. And you got to be able to put a full game of basketball together in the CAC. You can't play quarters. You can't play halves. You got to put 4 quarters together. And I think that our girls remember that. And so they're ready, and that was one thing we talked about, is we get them again on our court, and we got to take care of business at home. So our girls will be ready. We're excited. Whether we're completely healthy or not, we got to go, and more people step up, and no one's going to back down if we're hitting adversity, and we talked about that a lot in practices. So the girls will be ready for York. It's our last home game for a while, so we got to take care of business. Yeah,
after this York College game, 3 consecutively on the road for your team, and you hit on something there that I want to touch on for a second, especially in a conference like this where you see everybody twice a year. Mm-hmm. And the emphasis has to be put on protecting your home court. Mm-hmm. How important is that in a format like this where you see every team twice a year, that if you win the games that are on your floor and maybe steal a couple on the road, you're going to be in great position? How important is it to protect that home court advantage?
It's huge. It's huge. You're the one that's not traveling. You're the one that's in your home environment. And we talk about that a lot, is they're coming into our town, our house, so to speak, and you have to take care of business on your home floor, and take pride in that. And then when you go on the road, you light a fire, and you get them there too. We talk about that a lot, especially after road wins or road losses. We talk about, okay, we got them again, later, and you got to take care of business at home.
The other game this week will be against St. Mary's as you travel down to St. Mary's County, and a game that you did protect home floor earlier this season, a 70-56 victory, and now you just mentioned it. Now you can put the pressure on them at their own gym, and this is a St. Mary's team who's a little bit down 2-8 so far in the conference, and they need to do the same thing as your girls do and climb their way back into contention. Victoria Diggs, 22 points. In that one, of course, we don't really know what her status is going to be going forward at this point, but you travel down to St. Mary's. What do you need to do to come away with a victory there? Is it really the same as what happened, minus Diggs if she doesn't play, or do you have to completely change things around to make sure you come away with the victory without her?
Yeah, no, we're not looking – we have a game on Wednesday that we have to focus on. until we get to that game on Saturday. But the biggest thing is just focus on us and control what we can control. Teams hit adversity. There's things that happen to every team. We're not the only team that's going through struggles or anything like that. And I don't necessarily think that we're going through a huge struggle. It's just things are a little bit different and other people need to step up. But the biggest thing is you play our game. We play our game. It doesn't matter who the 5 are on the floor at that time. We know what we have to do, and those 5 have to execute. And then when your number's called on and you sub in, you do what you can control. And so we take it one game at a time and focus on us.
Well, hopefully we come away with 2 victories for you guys this week. And, Carrie, we'll talk to you again the same time next week.
All right, thank you.
Joined now by head swimming coach Justin Anderson. Coach, back in action after what was a long hiatus for your team. First off, let's talk about that before we even get into the results from this week. You take, almost a month off, you'd have to say, if not even a little bit more than that, between one meet to the next. You go to York this past weekend. Is it a little bit difficult to get your athletes back into the right mindset, being off for so long without an actual competition? I know you guys are practicing and everything, but it's not exactly the same thing as having a competitive meet. Is it a little bit difficult to get your athletes back into that mindset of, now we got to go, this is the time, we have to put the effort in, and get them out of that mindset of relaxing a little bit over the Christmas holiday?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to get back into racing. It's been 2 months since we raced at F&M, which was our last actual competition. We try to incorporate racing every day in practice, though, to keep them kind of sharp with getting up and going when they need to. And the team did a really good job kind of picking up where they left off unrested at our last meet against St. Mary's, since F&M was a shaved and tapered meet. So this was kind of a get the rust off type of meet see where we're at after a hard 2 weeks of Florida and winter break training, where we're doing lots of doubles and really breaking them down.
So when we get into the meet this week, it was at York College, and we talk about the men first. And, of course, there's 2 athletes, one between the men, one between the women, that we're constantly going to talk about. The one is Christian, and he has another strong meet on Saturday. The person I really want to talk about is Luke Holloway. He gets a win in the 200 free, and what has he done? He's just a first year in this program. What have you seen with him so far since he's come into the program that leads you to believe that he could be a very, very good swimmer by the time his 4 years are done here at Frostburg?
Yeah, Luke's done a great job since he joined us this September. Really incredible work ethic, great trainer. In his 200 free, which he won this weekend, he went a 149. And earlier in the year at F&M, he was a 146, and he's actually got the 3rd fastest time in the conference in that event. And he's the 3rd fastest in the 100 free also. And especially in the 200, he's dropped over 11 seconds in that event since he came in from high school. So he's made a ton of progress really quickly, and I'm excited to see what he can do come championships.
So, of course, we do have to talk about Christian, though. Christian had another good day for you guys. He came away with a couple wins, didn't win the 50 free. He did take second in that event, but he seems to just, no matter what the situation is, pick up right where he left off. And since he's come to Frostburg, he's been one of the most dominant swimmers, and he is going to be by the end of his time here, one of the most dominant swimmers this conference has ever seen. What has it been like so far to work with Christian and see him grow from the time that he got here to Frostburg to where he is now?
Yeah, Christian's been a lot of fun to work with for the past 4 years, and it's been exciting these last couple years to kind of see him hone in on the little things and what he can do to really improve his events as he looks to make nationals this last year. Christian's definitely a much better rested swimmer than he is in season. So coming off of Florida and the last week where we've been training at home, where we've really been killing them in the practices, he had some really solid times for being as broken down as he is, and even his 50 where he came in second. For where we are, I was really happy with it.
The other men's athlete that I want to talk about is Connor Giaffrida. He broke the U.S. Paralympic record in both the mile and it was the 1,000, correct? It was the 1,000 yards that he broke as well, and breaking records of his teammate, Zach Shattuck. And these two went to the Paralympic Worlds together, and even though Connor is breaking Zach's records, it seems like they have become rather close since the two of them got here. What is the relationship like between those two, being two of the only Paralympic athletes that are in this conference?
Yeah, they're definitely very close. They really push each other. They also really support each other and want, to see the other be successful and improve. And I think it's been nice for each of them to have the other person to say, okay, they raise the bar here, now I've got to raise it up a little bit higher. So I'm really excited for them to both have the opportunity to race at championships head-to-head and kind of see what they can do and push each other to even greater heights. And
Megan Connor is breaking records in just his first year in Frostburg. When you brought him into Frostburg, you knew that he was going to be a special talent on the Paralympic side. What did you see with Connor that made you really want to recruit him and bring him here to Frostburg?
Yeah, I think with any athlete, I look for athletes that, have a strong desire to improve, have a solid work ethic, can set goals and chase after them. And Connor had those things, whether you're a Paralympic athlete or not. And Connor had a lot of big goals that we talked about through the recruiting process and that we've worked towards since he's been here. Making a world championship team was one of those, and really starting to move up on the international circuit for Paralympics. So breaking these American records is great, but Connor also has bigger goals in sight that we're working towards beyond that.
Let's touch on the women's side of things now for a second, and we have to start with her every single time we talk, just because, just like Christian on the other side, she has been so unbelievably dominant in her time here, and Macy Nitchie picking up more wins at York again this week, and it seems like it's almost, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it almost seems like it's impossible for her to lose. The way that she swims, she is by far, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I think she's been, since your time here, probably been the most impressive athlete that you've had, men's or women's side. Macy this year, it seems like she's going to have a very good shot at making nationals along with Christian. What do you think the absolute ceiling is for Macy Nitchie when it comes to a level like that? Is she a strong contender for winning, for getting medals at nationals? Is that something that is really achievable for her?
Yeah, I think Macy steps up to kind of whatever competitions around her. We saw that at Franklin Marshall this November, where she was racing D1 swimmers from University of Delaware and came up on top of them. So I think if Macy makes it to the national meet, she'll step up and race with whoever she's got with her and push to beat them. She likes to race. She likes to win. And if she's got the right heat of fast people with her, I think she'll end up somewhere near the top.
Of course, you have other athletes that have been very, very strong this year on the women's side. One of them that comes to mind immediately is Maddie Weinberger, picking up a win again this week as she won the 100-yard breaststroke. And she seems like somebody who has improved a lot from last year. She was a very good athlete for you a year ago, but what are the strides that you've seen with her from a year ago to now that has made her such a very good swimmer?
Yeah, Maddie's always been really consistent as long as she's been here. Obviously, in her specialty events, 100 and 200 breaststroke, she's very solid for us. She hasn't lost a racing conference this year in those events, which is exciting, especially heading into championships in just a few weeks here. She's definitely become a stronger IMer for us this past year, and an even bigger leadership force in the pool and outside of the pool. I think she's somebody who, the ceiling is the limit. It's really, she can do whatever she puts her mind to.
Now this week coming up, you stay within competition, but you go out of conference. It's a tri-meet with Salem coming to town and Bethany coming to town. First thing you look at it, is there any different emphasis put on what is going to be happening in the pool, knowing that it's not a conference meet, it's a tri-meet? Is there any difference in approach to how things will go down in the pool, knowing that it's not a CAC opponent coming?
No, not really. We're still working out what lineup we're going to go with between the three coaches. And depending what we go with, we might see some people in some off events. But yeah, we just want to get up there and race and use it as another opportunity to rehearse for our championship meet and see where we're at this point of the season during some really hard training phases that we're going through. And hopefully we're in a good spot as we start to rest in the next few weeks.
Is it an opportunity, though, to get some people into different events that they don't usually race and see what they have?
In in a lot of cases, our non-conference meets are those opportunities. This being a tri-meet, since we do only have 6 lanes, each team only gets 2 entries per event, so we've still got to go with at least our strongest person in every event just to make sure that we're getting the points we need to give ourselves the best shot at winning. So you'll probably see less people in off events this meet than you would in another meet where we've got some flexibility.
With Salem and Bethany coming into town, what can you tell us about those 2 programs and what you think your chances are in this tri-meet on Saturday?
Yeah, Salem's made a lot of progress, and I think this is either their 2nd or 3rd year back since they reinstated the team. Their men's team is definitely much stronger and deeper than they've been the last couple years. Their women's team's still growing. I think we've got a great chance to come away with some wins against them, and Bethany's also going through a rebuilding period, and I think there's another great opportunity there for both our teams to pick up some wins.
All right, Coach, well, best of luck to you come Saturday, and we'll talk to you again next Monday afternoon.
Thanks.
Joined now by head track and field coach Dale Louie. And, Coach, we're really back into the swing of things now after what was a long break. You had 1 meet. You go on this month-long break. You come back for West Virginia a week ago, and then this week both of your teams were at Susquehanna. And let's talk about that meet for a second. And first we'll start with the women. And it's almost hard not to lead off with Kayla with what she does because she's such an incredible athlete. And she goes on and she wins the 200 again, another ECAC qualifying time for her. With her, though, at this point, I kind of want to talk about something different with her. And she's going to be an athlete for you that's at nationals, most likely both for the indoor and the outdoor. The one thing that I really want to know from you about Kayla is what you think her ceiling is. Is she an athlete that when it comes to nationals that's capable of bringing home medals for Frostburg State? Is she that good of an athlete where she can hold her own on the top level with the top athletes in the D3 level in the country?
Healthy wise and running well, absolutely. And then the key factor is, which is something that hopefully she's learned, is the tactical side of it, the strategy side of the racing. If you look at both her 60 at nationals last year, and you look at her 200 at nationals outdoors last year, with just a little bit different kind of race pattern, she's in finals. And if you're in finals indoors, you run a good race, you're All-American. You want a great race, maybe you're a national champion. 200 was a 9-lane track last year, so you still got to beat somebody in the finals. So that's the side of it that really needs to continue to be worked on, and to stay healthy. This track and field sport is not a sport that as soon as you get taped up, you're probably in a little bit of trouble. It's not like other sports where you can get taped up and sit on a bench for a couple of minutes, come back in and play. I don't mean to be derogatory to other sports and stuff, but there's the margin for error in track is just so small, and it doesn't matter what in our sport, it doesn't matter what you did all year long. You could be undefeated going into nationals, get the flu. You're not an All-American. Yep. You're not this magazine's All-American or that magazine's All-American. It's a 1 or 2 day thing. You better be healthy. You better do it. So it's a real crapshoot, so to speak.
Another athlete picking up a win and another ECAC time for your team on Saturday was Destiny Logan, as she won the 400 meter. She qualifying for the ECACs with a time of just over a minute. It seems to me like Destiny, if you look at it at this point in the season, yes, you're only a couple meets in, but she may be so far your most improved athlete from a year ago. And what has led to her development, and what has made her able to hold her own with your top athletes like Kayla?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. She had a very, very good weekend here and has had a good indoor season. Period. Goes back to a little what I just said. She's been healthy. She's been able to train probably more consistently. She's a senior. I think there's a little focus there in an edge there that maybe wasn't there as an underclassman. She's very motivated to be qualified individually for ECACs, which she's now accomplished. That's been a little bit of a goal for her for a couple of years, not just run relays. So we hope she can keep that rolling, because she's a very good runner and an integral part of our relay teams. And if she can get it rolling with some of the other women we've had this year, we can have very good relay teams without Kayla Truesdale on those relay teams.
And we'll get to those relay teams in a minute, because you had 2 strong showings in relays as well. And a third athlete, along with Destiny Logan and Kayla Truesdale, that was part of those relays was Kayleen Estrada, one of your underclassmen, who I think is going to be one of your better athletes and has a very high ceiling as well. She takes the second place spot in the triple jump this year to get you some points on the field side of things. What has she done from her freshman year to now her sophomore year that has shown that she's improved and she can be a top athlete for 4 years here at Frostburg?
I think she would totally agree with me when I say that attitude has really been a key thing. And by that, I don't mean that she had a bad attitude last year, but she's certainly psychologically matured into a collegiate student as well as an athlete, and she's having a lot more fun with it. I think she's a little less stressed when things don't go well. She's moving on if something doesn't go well, and it's made all the difference in her training, and it's it's showing up in the meets.
The 2-4 by 200 and 400 wins. So you get a win in each as well this weekend. That team of Logan, Estrada, Truesdale, and then you throw sophomore Gabrielle Reason in there, and you get another ECAC qualifying effort in the process in the 4 by 200 meter relay. Having just such a well-rounded team of athletes, especially on the women's side, it's got to make your job easy and difficult at the same time, because you can throw 4 athletes like that out there to win a relay, but at the same time you have so many athletes that are good that the decision can't be easy to say we're going to throw these four women out there this week when you have 3 or 4 other athletes that could go out there and do the exact same thing.
Yeah, you're right. One of the big advantages we have is that these women who we're talking about here tend to work together and tend to get along, and they tend to take pride and interest in their teammates' performance as much as their own, and that makes it a lot easier when it comes to making some of those decisions. And we try to promote this idea that the more people you can get into the conference championships, the more people you make into the finals. Clearly, the higher the chance we're going to score some points and things. So we hope we can keep this going. We very much think that we still have a lot of improvement in every single one of these women that we're talking about. So we're very optimistic that staying healthy, there are good things to come.
Now let's move it over to the men's side, and one athlete that I want to talk about in particular on that side is John Kearns. He picks up another ECAC qualifying mark, and you're used to having an extremely good thrower on this Frostburg team. You lost J.R. Lowry to graduation a year ago. He's by far the most impressive thrower that this school has ever seen, but since John Kearns has come in here, he's done admirably. I don't want to say replacing, because you don't replace a guy like J.R. Lowry. It's just not possible when you have a guy that's that dominant. But John, in just his sophomore season, has shown that by the time he comes to be a senior, he may very well be able to challenge for some of those record marks that JR's hit.
Yeah, you're right. Particularly, I think in the weight throw here, he's already, sniffing that record of JR's there. And we'd all, including JR, would like to see him, break that. So he needs to continue to work on his technique. He is an athletic young man. He's a big young man. You put those two things together with technique, and the sky's the limit for him. It's really a matter of can John become consistent, in his technique, so that he can hit that big one. And that's for all the field events. That's really the big challenge. Can you put all those links together on a given day?
The other athlete that I want to hit on is Shamar Nelson individually, because he had another solid day, taking second place in the triple this time for your squad. And it seems like with Shamar, it's a little bit of a different situation than John, where John is going to be a very solid thrower for you guys for the next few years. Shamar, being a junior, still has the rest of this year and next year, but he's just an athletic specimen that can do it all. Whether it be the sprints, the jumps, whatever it is, he is just a phenomenal athlete from top to bottom.
Yeah, he is, he's good proof that if you work at it and you've got some talent, you're going to get better. When he came here, he was very injury prone. He was out of shape, I really admire the fact that he has made a commitment to doing the things that he needs to do to become a better athlete. The stretching, the taking care of himself. He's unlike a lot of jumpers. He is willing to put the running in and recognizes that the running is an important component of his jumps and stuff. Be honest with you, he jokes about doing the high jump and wants to do triple jump, and he's actually thrown a little bit of shot in a meet and stuff. And there's been the joke recently making the rounds of him doing the decathlon. And he could probably get a pretty good decathlon score.
I believe I also said he plays second in the triple. He plays second in the long, is what I meant to say. Christian Healy, though, on the other hand, did place second in the triple, and I think it speaks that you had 3 second-place finishes in 3 field events. You have good athletes in the sprints, but would you say, when you look at it from top to bottom on your roster, where you are going to be able to pick up a lot of points this year in both the indoor and the outdoor season is going to be in the field events, whether it be the throws, whether it be the jumps, whatever it is? I feel like, at least from where I'm looking, the field events are where you're going to have an advantage over a lot of teams.
We are right now probably stronger, in that area there. Depth is probably the better way to say it. Mm-hmm. We're deeper in those areas than the distance and maybe the sprints and things. I do think we have some ability to pick up some points in those other event areas there. Similar to the women, one of the things on the men's side with the sprinters is just trying to figure out, all right, who's going to run on our relays, because we do have a number of of options there. So that's a good thing. They all need to kick it up a notch or more. And just as we've talked about with some of these other people, they can kick those things into gear if they're willing to put the work in at practice.
Well, and you mentioned that you have some options on the relays as well, and that is where your team picked up a win on Saturday for the men was in the distance medley relay. Timmy Wolodkin, Tyreek Charles, Jay Ricards, and Robert Romano picking up the win in that one. And I think a lot of those names will be familiar to people that have been listening to the show all year long, as those are a lot of the guys that do well for you as well in cross country. Does it help knowing that especially 3 of those athletes that I just mentioned put up solid times in cross country this season? Is it a much easier transition to have those guys go from cross country to then making it to the track, where you're not having to deal with the differences of surface, of hills, and all that stuff? Knowing that they do the cross country, do you think that it helps them with their times in track and field as well?
Well, to compete at the collegiate level, you're going to have to be running all year round, and so the cross country is definitely a very good base. Typically, sometimes you'll see people who are maybe a better track person than cross country, or vice versa. They do both, and we certainly advocate doing both, because we kind of believe that training-wise, one complements the other. Jake Rickers, for example, is probably a stronger track person than a cross country. He runs good cross country for us, but he's probably a stronger track person, and probably be the first one to tell you that. Robbie Romano, it's a little bit of a toss-up. He is a guy that probably on the track in time will find most of his success moving up in distance, although he's placed in the conference in the mile and certainly has the capability of doing that, again. So we haven't really gotten all of our cross people rolling indoors here, and that's been for a couple different reasons. So we're looking for that distance group to start picking it up a little bit, just because they've not been racing as much, they've not been training as much, and that's fine. They've got a long year and outdoors still to go. So we got to be a little careful, with that. And again, there's a little bit of maturity there. That's a very young group. We don't have a senior in the bunch. And in fact, most of them are freshmen and sophomores. So we look for some good things to come from them as well.
This week coming up, then you travel out to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, and you go to Bucknell for this weekend's meet, and it's a big one. It's a 2-day meet, something that you guys don't do all the time. It's going to also feature a lot of Division I talent. Do you kind of use a meet like this as with that Division I, Division II talent really mixed in there a lot more heavily than most meets, as kind of a gauge to see where your team is at this point in the season, and say, all right, we can compete with these big schools. We have some really, really good athletes here. This is where we're at this point, and this is where we need to get.
Yes. You're right. We're supposedly looking at 25 schools up there, so it's going to be a monster 2-day meet. The quality depth is there because of the schools that you mentioned, and that's very helpful, because then you've got the situation where every single flight, every single heat is going to feature some quality people, and that's what you need to do to get to meet, to get better. It's just you've got to run against that or compete against that good competition. And sometimes at our level you get somebody that that does pretty well in an early meet or something, and quite frankly they think that they can walk on water, no, they can't. So these meets are good too to put some things in perspective. You get a national caliber person like we typically have on our team. It pushes them a little bit more and helps them get to where they need to be. But at the same time, the other people who've qualified for the meet, they also see right off the bat some depth of competition, which is helpful for them.
Mm-hmm. So there's a big 2-day meet coming up. That's Friday and Saturday at Bucknell University. And Coach, good luck to you. Good luck to your athletes as you head to the track on Friday and Saturday. And hopefully we talk to you after a couple good results again. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
Thank you very much.